Hi everyone. In this video, we will discuss about Amazon Simple Storage Service S3. So we have been discussing about cloud computing, and specifically we have started discussing on Amazon services, different services. So storage is one of the services provided by Amazon, and we are discussing about Simple Storage Service. So Amazon S3 is a storage service. At names it implies. It means we can store certain kind of data. Maybe we can use S3 for data lakes, or we can maybe host our websites there. We can show our contents using S3, or we can use this for data backup, or we can also use for data archiving as well, for media sharing, or maybe software delivery. So these are some of the applications we can use. So we will have a storage, and we can store our data in the cloud. And now this S3 is actually an object storage service. So it's object storage services means, do we have some other storage services? Yes, we have other storage services as well, like EBS, that is Elastic Block Store, and then like EFS, that is Elastic File System. So that is what we are discussing, that is object based storage service provided by Amazon. So if this is object-based storage or the object storage service, what does it mean for us? So for as a user, we can say that if we have saved some information, or if we have saved some, for example, some file in S3 storage service, and if we want to make any change in that file, then we actually need to download the whole object, make the required changes, and then we need to re-upload it. This is not the case that we just make changes in the some portion of that object and then this done. So in this object means we have to download, make changes, and then re-upload the whole object in the storage service. The data is stored as object in resources called buckets. So buckets are basically container. You can see here. So this is a container, and here we have the AWS cloud. We have this container or the bucket, and in this bucket we store our objects, and those objects can be anything, files, picture, audio, we'll see. So there's a bucket, and in that bucket we mentioned that in that bucket we will have objects, and the size of that object, the maximum size of that object can be 5 terabytes, but the bucket size is actually virtually this is unlimited space we can keep on saving our data there. But in those bucket we store objects, and the maximum size for those objects is 5 terabytes. Let's say if we consider that these are our objects here, this triangle and these shapes, so their maximum size will be 5 terabytes. And objects can be image, objects can be video, file, or log. So these are different kind of objects which we can store in S3 bucket. These bucket names are supposed to be they are selected to be universal, and they must be unique across globe. So like globally they should be unique. We have to select certain combination of letters in a such a way that this should be unique across the globe. So bucket name. And data can be stored and accessed over the internet. So like for example, in the AWS cloud we have created this bucket, and in this bucket we have certain kind of data. Then how we can access this data? So one of the ways is that we can access this data using internet services, and in this case the path to reach or to retrieve the contents from the bucket will be like this. So you can see here this is the S3, and then we will have the region code, and then we can have bucket name, and then we can have also key name. So in this way we can actually access the objects in this bucket there. So this user, and using internet connection, they can actually access this bucket from here. And then this is maybe here we can have and there are other ways also to interact with this bucket. An important thing is that why we use this cloud service provided by Amazon, the storage service, because this is scalable. Scalable means we can keep on adding or keep on uploading our data in the cloud, and this will automatically be scaled with that. And second thing is this is highly available. Highly available means this is data, whatever we data upload in some of the bucket, so that data will be replicated in most of the cases to maybe minimum of 3 availability zones. So we have discussed about availability zones and a region in some other video. It means the data will be redundantly available in different portions there in availability zones. And if one of the availability zone is in problem, then we can still actually recover our data. We can still retrieve our data from other availability zones. And the second characteristics, or the third characteristics of this, is that the data is durable. Durable means they give 11.9 durable service durability. 11.9 actually corresponds to an average annual expected loss of these many objects. It means in a 1 year we can only have these many object loss. So in other words, if we have 1 billion objects, then we can go without any loss for at least 100 years. You can imagine that how much durability is provided by the S3 services. To interact with the object, what we need, so we need first the bucket name, and we mentioned that bucket name is a globally unique bucket name. And then we also need version ID. A version ID is actually a string that Amazon S3 generates when you add an object to a bucket. So you can see here in a bucket, whenever you add an object into it, we will have a version ID. And then we also need an object key. So object key actually uniquely identifies an object in a bucket. So these are some of the things which we need when we want to interact with the bucket. And we can interact with the bucket using programming method, like we can have some SDK, we can have a console method. So these are different methods by which we can interact with the bucket. And also we can control access to the objects which are in our bucket, so that only legitimate users should have access to it. So we can control access using IAM, that is Identity Access Management, and we can also control the access to these objects using S3 bucket policies. We can also have per object ACL, so that is access control list. And to make communication secure between the buckets and the user, we can also use some encryption. So we can have server-side encryption, and we can also have client-side encryption. And by using those encryption, we can encrypt the data or secure the data at rest and the data in transit. So not only data when it's just saved here, we can encrypt it, but also when the data is in move or in transit, we can use encryption. Now, as per the user demand, like the user may archive some of the data, and some of the data user may want within millisecond. So on the basis of frequency of access, S3 has provided different storage classes. And in this slide, you can see I have taken this slide from this URL, and I'll share this URL in the description section. And you can see in this S3, we have different storage classes. We'll be discussing in detail in maybe some other video, but you can see this is S3 standard, one storage class. Then we have S3 intelligent tiering, S3 standard, infrequent access. So IA stand for infrequent access. Then S3 one zone infrequent access. Then we have S3 Glacier instant retrieval. We have S3 Glacier flexible retrieval. And then we have S3 Glacier deep archive. So depending on the requirement, we can select different storage class. And in the first one, that is standard. So in the standard, and this is the by default storage class used by Amazon S3. And here we put the data which is accessed frequently. And you can see if we go on the right hand side, like if we go here, we can have less frequently access here, and then even slower data here. And maybe, so for example, here whatever data we have, we can access the data in within milliseconds. And let's say here in the deep archive, we can access the data, we need hours to access that data. So that is the storage class which is used for infrequently accessed data. So here it says that this is active and frequently accessed data. This is useful for that kind of data, and we can access within millisecond, and the data is replicated in at least 3 availability zones. And this is, let's say, this is the much price per GB. gigabyte. And then we have data with the so for intelligent tiering, so if we don't know about the data or the access pattern, we cannot predict the access pattern, whether we will be accessing the data within millisecond or in hours. So for that we have intelligent tiering, which can shift data from a standard S3 standard to some other to make or to save some money for us. So in this case also, data is saved in at least 3 availability zone, you can see here, and this is the pricing for that. And here we monitor, or this storage class actually monitors the data, and if the data is not being accessed frequently, then the data can be moved to maybe less expensive storage class, and if when needed, it can again shift back to maybe a standard one. And here actually thing is that we need to have some minimum storage duration. It means we are being dictated that you need to store your data for minimum duration. I'll be discussing about minimum duration, that how much duration is needed in some other video. And then infrequently accessed data, here you can see we put the data in this kind of storage class, which is infrequently accessed, and this is also in minimum of 3 availability zones, and this is the rest of the details. And the same way we have one zone infrequent access, so here the data is stored in at least 3 availability zones, and in one zone, as name suggests, this data will only be there in one availability zone. And if this is one availability zone, you can imagine that if that availability zone gets any problem, then we will not be able to recover the data, but at the same time we will have less expensive option by using this S3 one zone infrequent access. And after that we have these 3 Glacier, which we use for data archiving, and here also we have Glacier with instant retrieval, and then we have Glacier flexible retrieval, and then we have deep archive. So you can see here in all these we have replication of the data in at least 3 availability zones, but the access time to retrieve the data, like we send a request and how much time it will take for the data to reach us, so that time will increase here in Glacier Deep Archive. And in the same way, if the data is being rarely accessed, so this will be the cheapest option, that is the Glacier and Deep Archive. So I'll put the discussion, this link in the description section. You can further explore this. So these are some of the storage classes we will be, I'll come up with in some Excel sheet where we have comparison of all these storage classes. And yeah, so that's it for today. Hope to see you in some other video on some cloud related topic. Thank you.